You're reviewing Bryce Murray's screen. So are we good?
I think so.
All right.
All right. Good afternoon. This is Bryce Murry and Kyle Oswalt. We are presenting on sampling and licensing laws. And let's just get right into it. So, all right, there we go. So first off, as an introduction, I wanted to get into what sampling is. So sampling is the practice of utilizing one portion of an existing musical composition and adding it into another. Whether it be a piece of music like a song, or whether it be just a piece of audio, either way, it is still classified as sampling. Sampling has been historically around since I think around the 60s, and it originated in hip hop, dance club music, and the likes. Nowadays, sampling can be seen in all sorts of different genres of music like pop and country even. So first, the sampling came about in the 60s with the first idea of sampling as the Chamberlin. It was a synthesizer that took 8 seconds of sound for artists to incorporate into music. What it did was it took recordings of piano keys and raised and lowered them to different pitches rather than taking the synthesizer and synthesizing different pitches to make them sound like piano keys. It actually took the individual piano key audio. In the early days of sampling, it was mainly an underground phenomenon. Many artists would alter the equalizer of songs from vinyls and mix different songs together to create a beat to rap over. Many of these artists would use their beats to pay tribute to popular R&B artists such as James Brown, Parliament/Funkadelic, and Earth, Wind and Fire. Once artists started selling mixtapes and gaining major profit from their samples, copyright owners started to take notice. And when they started to take notice, they started catching artists and prosecuting them in trials just to cut into their music so they could make money off of it as well. But the artists argued back that it was fair use and paid tribute to the sampled artists so that they weren't in any legal trouble. Nowadays, you must request a mechanical license from the publisher to sample a portion of a song. Before this, the artist can decide whether or not it is worth requesting a mechanical license. If, for instance, a simple drum beat or guitar lick may not be eligible depending on the uniqueness of it. You can't take any drum beat and call it your own because everyone has used that drum beat for who knows how long. And the biggest factor is whether or not there is enough amount of the use for a mechanical license. For example, a 10-second recording may not be considered substantial use depending on the repetition or recording. It may be eligible for copyright protection if it is looped throughout the entire song, or if it is a title lyric or chorus or a hook of a song that is used, it can be considered substantial use. So some examples are You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, which uses a portion of Super Freak by Rick James, and the entire song is just the first intro of Super Freak by Rick James. Here is You Can't Touch This. After that. All right. That was the instrumental by Super Freak, and here is that exact instrumental. Another example is Kid Cudi's Highs and Lows, which sampled Bob Dylan's Lady Lay, Lady Lady Lay. It has a little bit of the instrumental and most of the chord progressions, if you listen in the background. Now compare that to Bob Dylan's Lady Lady Lay. has the exact same instrumental, which would mean both of these samples needed a mechanical license because they were substantially used. Another great example of an artist taking someone else's instrumental is Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice stealing Queen's bass line at the beginning of their song. It was a lot of legal trouble and they sued him many times to get the final license and ownership of their song. Here's Queen's Under Pressure. And here is Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. And as you can hear, it has the exact, almost the exact same bass line.
All right, so that is Bryce's portion. And basically, I'm just going to add on to what he talked about as far as licensing goes. This is going to be a super in-depth segment about basically how to obtain a license and what to do with it. So to get started, granting and clearing licenses for digital samples. So when a sampling artist wishes to make copies of recordings containing the sampled musical composition of someone else, obviously you have to reach out to the owner of that composition in order for it to be legal. And if the owner grants permission, it is usually in the form of a mechanical license. Bryce has already covered that. So the applicability of compulsory license provision. The use of a sample containing the copyrighted song of another will not be subject to the compulsory license provision of the copyright law. Congress specifically recognized the legitimate interests of songwriters who might wish to prevent their musical works from being perverted, distorted, or travestied. A compulsory license provision provides a compulsory license that includes the privilege of making a musical style or manner or interpretation of the performance involved, but the arrangement shall not change the basic melody or fundamental character of the work, except to express consent to the copyright owner. And these are alternatives of the music copyright owner. So when a copyright owner is faced with the circumstances of an artist having included a portion of his musical composition in otherwise original song, the alternatives available to the copyright owner are to A, do nothing, B, you do not have to grant the license. You can grant a mechanical license for a one-time flat fee, grant a mechanical license for a royalty, grant a mechanical license for a royalty, and take a share in a percentage of the performance royalties of the new composition containing the sample. 6, seek co-ownership interest in the new composition, and 7, seek an assignment of the copyright in the new composition. So basically what I'm going to do now is going to go much more in depth to these topics and why they are relevant. So the first point was doing nothing, right? So when a music copyright owner discovers that an artist has made and distributed recordings containing a sampled portion of his work, he may choose to do nothing. And that sounds very obvious, but this is likely going to happen in one of the circumstances below. The material sampled was not qualitatively substantial part of the copyright owner's song, or the similarity between the owner's musical work and sampling artist's work was so slight as to render the similarity unrecognizable by the listening public or even to a trained ear. If you remember, Dr. Linden showed us a video of 2 songs. I think one was by one of the musicians in the Beatles, where the 2 songs were very similar, and it went to court about it. But anyway, If the sampling was so slight that it may be difficult to prove the similarity of the composition was the result of sampling at all. So next, moving on, there is a flat fee license for sound recording. And it states the owner of the sound recording may often have a much stronger case for infringement than the owner of the music underlying the recording. But record companies who generally own the recording are more tolerant of sampling because they know that the artist they are affiliated with is doing the same thing. Thus, it is not always in the best interest of a recording company to do anything that would restrain customary practices or help establish legal case law that supports strong protection against the use of sound recording or musical compositions in digital samples. Record companies, therefore, typically accept a one-time flat fee payment for the use of samples from their recording. Moving on, this is about refusing to license someone for your copyrighted work. Should the music copyright owner be approached by a sampling artist seeking permission to make and distribute recordings containing a sampled portion of the owner's composition, the copyright owner may refuse to grant a license. It has been suggested that Congress consider a compulsory license scheme for the licensing of digital samples similar to the regime currently in place for recording under Section 115 of the copyright law. A reasonable reason to refuse to license may be that the recording in which the sample is intended to be used contains indecent, racist, or other opprobrious language. Granting mechanical license for a one-time flat fee. If the copyright owner who discovers the unauthorized use of his work in a sample recordings decides to do something about it, the response he receives will depend upon whether the sampling artist or record company perceives that the recording is actually infringing upon their work. If the copyright owner's position is weak, the parties may wish to settle upon the issuance of a mechanical license in exchange for a one-time flat fee. On occasion, a copyright owner may be asked to grant such a license on a gratis basis, that is, for free. Music copyright owners, once persuaded to issue a license, will generally charge at least some nominal fee, enough to cover the administrative cost of issuing the license. This is usually from like 50 to 100 bucks. Okay, and then you have a mechanical license fee that generates a royalty. A straightforward arrangement under which sampled music may be licensed is the issuance of a mechanical license in exchange for a royalty based upon the number of copies of the recording. The royalty in these arrangements is usually a function of the statutory rate set forth in the compulsory license provision in the copyright law, as modified from time to time by the Copyright Royalty Board. The sampling artist would take the position that is unfair for his publisher to pay the full statutory rate because the amount of material sampled from the copyright owner's work represents only a small part of the original musical work which it is embodied. So this is a mouthful here. Granting a mechanical license for a royalty and taking a share in a percentage of the performance royalties of the new composition. So basically, up until this point, there is still a chance that the copyright owner is not satisfied with the agreement. And understandably, the copyright owner may assert that he should not only receive a portion of the mechanical royalty for his copies made and distributed of the recording, but should also share a portion of the performance royalties resulting from the broadcast of the music on radio and TV and also other public performances. You could also seek co-ownership in the new composition, where the sampling artist can be persuaded that the copyright owner has a very strong position and the fortitude to support that position with legal action. The parties may negotiate an arrangement that satisfies the copyright owner's desire to share in all sources of subsidiary revenue derived from new composition. The most elegant way to assure that the copyright owner and the sampling artist each receive the proper share of all music publishing income derived, putting the new composition to uses for the partner to enter into a co-publishing agreement. Under this arrangement, the copyright owner is granted a co-ownership interest in the new composition containing the sampled material. This has become a daily common solution for the sampling issue. seeking new assignment in the new composition. If the copyright owner feels he has the leverage and all the fortitude and money necessary to engage in litigation, then he may insist in nothing less than a complete ownership interest in the new composition. An extreme position such as this may be justified in cases where the sampled recording adds little original material to the owner's copyrighted song. This may be the case where the new composition is merely a modern arrangement of the song, the instrumental portion of the composition with modified or new lyrics, or the song lyrics sung to a newly composed music. Okay, so this is sound recording licensing. When a sampling is substantial, record companies will, it says may, but they will demand a royalty in most cases. In fact, a record company may actually be under obligation to contract with the recording artist who created the original recording to use good faith efforts to generate income from sampled uses of the recording. And the rates for a sound recording typically range from ½ cent to 5 cents per unit, with advances usually starting at about $5 grand. Where sampling artists' additional musical material is owned by another. There is a special problem where the sampling artist does not own the composition containing the sampled song. For example, a sampling artist may include a sample of a song in a recording of a song owned by another copyright owner, adding no original material of his own. If the sampling artist does not own or claim to own the new musical composition embodied in his original recording, a co-ownership agreement may be the only solution to a serious sampling problem the artist has created for the several copyright owners affected. In such circumstances, the owner of the two musical compositions used in the unauthorized creation of the new work will need to work out a co-publishing agreement among themselves. This could be difficult and this could be a difficult negotiation because it would seem that none of the parties involved would have any particular leverage over the others. And this is basically just a summation of what we have been over. It has been the practice of sampling artists to sample under the assumption that sampling is not an infringement or with the knowledge their activity was illegal, but thought their sampling not be discovered. Yes, sampling is illegal if you do not get a license for it. Any artist who has incorporated in his recording a digital sample from a song or sound recording of another is likely to be held to have infringed two copyrights, that in a sound recording and that in the song embodied in the recording. The first federal judge to have issued a ruling of the issue of such infringement enjoined all sales of the recording and took the unusual step in referring the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Criminal Prosecution. Thus, it should now be very clear that sampling is illegal and dealt with very seriously by the law. And a sampler is therefore strongly advised to seek permission whenever he knows he physically copied the sounds of another song. And these are the sources we both used for our project.
Thank you for listening in. That was our presentation.
I think I gotta end it, right?
Yeah.
How do I end it?
There should
Oh,
be
wait, I
stuff
see it.